become enlightened. So, and if you look at the sutras also, there are places in the sutras where the Buddha supposedly says, oh, you know, women first have to be reborn as men in order to become enlightened and things like this. But then in other places, the Buddha says, or it's made quite clear that, again, women are equal in their ability to become enlightened to monks. So there are people researching this now, Western academics, Buddhist academics in Asia. And my personal opinion is that the Buddha taught equality. Whether we're talking race, whether we're talking gender, the Buddha also very clearly, whenever a Brahmin, right, someone of high caste, Hindu caste, would come to him, and they would say, basically they would say, oh, the Brahmins are better than these lower caste people. Why do you have these lower caste people in your community? He would essentially tell them, you're full of nonsense, this is ridiculous. Your caste doesn't mean anything. The important thing is the quality of someone's mind. So the Buddha undermined all of this discrimination again and again and again. So my personal opinion is that because we see all this contradiction in the Buddhist literature, whether women are equal or not, my personal opinion is that the Buddha taught women are equal in their capacity for enlightenment to men. And then the discrimination that we see, like in the Vinaya, these special rules, it was added later. Because later generations of men who became monks, they grew up in a culture that said women are less than men. And so when they saw the Buddha's teachings of equality, they couldn't understand it. And so my personal opinion, nobody can prove this, but my personal opinion is that the Buddha taught equality and that the discrimination that we see in the sutras and in the Vinaya was added later by men who were ignorant and who couldn't see that women are equal in their capacity for enlightenment. But nobody can prove that. That's just my opinion. But that's based upon looking at the sutras, looking at the research, and seeing all of these contradictions that don't make sense. So thank you very much for your question. That was a very good question. Yes? Let me give you the microphone.
In your last lecture, 1 hour ago, you said concerning the same history of Venerable Thích Đức. So you say that the religion discrimination from the ZM government and from the communism. So from my point of view, I see that there is a big difference, because at the time when our Thích Đức had come a bodhisattva after burning himself and so on. Some of myself, I was at the demonstration at that time when I was very young, but I cannot approach him because there were many policemen and so on. But I am thinking myself, why and how can we arrive at this situation, you know? And comparing the discrimination from the communism, it's worse. And under the Ngô Dinh regime and government, we can change. We can change because it's not like the communism who would like erase religious freedom. And after that, we have, after half a century, many doctrines who relate what happened at that time. And after that, the truth can surface ourselves, all the Vietnamese people, cannot judge how and of our level is two parts. One part is communism, the other is communism. It's also, I don't know, from which part. And sometimes, all the war also is misleading to that. The second point that I asked you also is blind faith, admiring faith, and confident. If blind faith is, we have the blind faith, and we, after that, anxiety is my second step.
As to the situation in Vietnam back then, as I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, all of you know that history far, far better than I do, especially those of you who lived some of it, or all of it. Which is, and partly there's very little information about those monks that I was speaking. There's very little information on them in English that I was able to find. That's part of the reason why I kept it very general. So I'm really not the best person to discuss the situation in Vietnam before the communists and after the communists. I felt a little funny when I started to give the talk and I saw all of you sitting here. I'm like, why am I talking about this? Some of you were there. So, but Venerable, most Venerable Dequan Lee asked me to mention these three monks, and of course that was part of the history. So I really can't say anything more about them. I can, however, talk about those three kinds of faith. Actually, it was admiring faith, then yearning or longing faith, and then confident faith. What I said was that blind faith actually has no place in the Dharma. Blind faith is not knowing anything and just saying, I believe, I believe, I believe. It's kind of useless. If you don't understand the Buddha's teachings, you cannot make any progress. If you don't have any access to the Buddha's teachings, say maybe because in Vietnam, the oppression that's happening now, in Vietnam, maybe you're in a small village in the mountain and your temple has been shut down or something. The government got rid of the monks or whatever. I don't know. For whatever reason, if you don't have access to the Dharma, it's better to just chant Namo Idapa, Namo Idapa than to do nothing. But the point is with these three kinds of faith, this admiring faith that we begin with maybe, where we just kind of like the Buddha. The Buddha looks nice, and we heard a couple of things. Oh, Buddha's compassionate. Okay, that's nice. What's good about that is if it leads us to the longing faith and then confident faith. If it ultimately leads us to confident faith, then this admiring faith, this very basic, uninformed, uneducated faith is good. But it's not good to stay there. If we see some attraction to the Buddha, we should pursue it. We should pursue it. So that was actually my point. Thank you for your question.
As you talked in the lecture this afternoon, that by taking the Bodhisattva vows, that we don't have to achieve all of them together, at once, and we do slowly. I know some of the Vietnamese Buddhists won't step up and take the Bodhisattva vows because they are so afraid that they are not able to keep them. So if a Buddhist, the one who took the Bodhisattva vows, and for some reason they cannot keep them perfectly, does it mean that person violate the vows and have more guilt than the one who don't? Thank you.
Well, let me say for monks and nuns, they say that your vows are only truly pure the moment that you receive them. every moment after that, your vows become more and more stained, more tarnished, more, not broken, but dented. They're only pure the moment that you take them. But because we cannot keep them perfectly, it doesn't mean we shouldn't take them at all. If we take vows, whether we're talking monastic vows or bodhisattva vows, we have established what we call that root of virtue. We planted that strong seed. So even if it doesn't bloom perfectly in this life, we planted a strong seed that will bear fruit later. See, everything that we think and say and do, it leaves an impression. Like, you know, you push your hand in the mud or in cement and it leaves that shape, right? So everything we think and say and do leaves an impression on the mind. And receiving monastic vows, receiving the bodhisattva vows, going for refuge, that leaves a really strong impression on the mind because it's a big deal. So, as I said though, it's something that we grow into over time. We can't expect ourselves to be perfect from day one. We're going to make mistakes. And sometimes it's an honest mistake that we didn't know. Sometimes it's a stupid mistake. We know better, but because of our ignorance, we do something wrong anyway. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't plant that seed, because it will eventually bear fruit. So, and I think the way, generally speaking, the way to repair bodhisattva vows is to stop and say, oh, I've made a mistake, and to try and generate compassion, to remind ourselves why we've taken those vows, and just to recommit.